Right. Where's the chat? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first session in the Edgware United Synagogue Adult Education Program from Pesach to Rosh Hashanah 2022. We have all had a tough 2+ years. COVID-19 has been followed by the Ukraine-Russia conflict. These two factors partly explain what some have termed the cost of living crisis. The Bank of England raised interest rates last Thursday, and inflation is forecast to rise to over 10% fairly soon. Not everyone is able to deal with this and many other issues without assistance. What do you do when you're all alone? Who do you turn to when there is nowhere to turn? Who can help when there is no one who can help? There are increasing numbers of vulnerable people in the Jewish community struggling with financial, legal, and administrative issues. The Paperweight Trust is a Jewish Citizens Advice Bureau that addresses these issues. It offers practical hands-on advice at a time of crisis. Our speaker tonight is Bela Perrin, the CEO of the Paperweight Trust. She draws on her broad experience in several charity and healthcare fields to help provide the vision and energy to maintain Paperweight as a key contributor to the social needs of our community. As a trustee and hands-on CEO, she is responsible for its day-to-day processes, including working closely with the head of services, as well as meeting and presenting the work of the charity to referrers, stakeholders, and the wider Jewish community. She is passionate about social justice and has come to understand through the establishment of Paperweight that the bigger picture needs to be viewed in close-up, and that so many small but important details require perfecting before the entity is complete and functional. After her presentation, if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, you can raise your virtual hand when the Q&A starts, and our controller will unmute you. Please do not raise your personal issues at this Q&A, but keep to a discussion of the role and function of the Paperweight Trust. So over to you, Bela.
Thank you. Thank you, Spencer, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very honoured to join, and I hope that I'll be able to explain to you and have the opportunity to explain to you about the work of Paperweight and how we help those who come to us. It's not working. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Just bear with me because I've never done a. What's happened here? Sorry. There we go. Okay. No, it's gone. What's happened to my shoot? Oh goodness. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I've never done a PowerPoint on a Zoom before, so bear with me. Okay. Looking after the most vulnerable is the first page of my PowerPoint, and vulnerable we find as an oft-quoted phrase, usually associated with those who are suffering, say from illness, a long-term chronic condition, a victim of abuse, or perhaps the elderly who are alone. Our community is blessed with a plethora of organisations and charities who can and do provide and respond in a myriad of ways to help somebody who is vulnerable. And in fact, when we started out, one of the reasons we started out with Paperweight around 12 years ago was because you have a kind of choice in life. You walk through your life, and we've all got lots of concerns and lots of reasons to be busy with ourselves and busy with our families, and sometimes that is quite enough to keep everyone with enough to do every day. But if you do sort of proceed with your eyes open, you can see that you can see what's going on within the community. And as I said, I think we're so fortunate that we live in an amazing community where there are so many organizations available to help people in different times of their lives, whether we're talking about teenagers or we're talking about young people, pre-marriage, after marriage, babies, can't have babies, can't cope with the babies, the elderly, counseling, all kinds of help is out there. But myself and a friend of mine and my husband, we thought that there is something that's missing within the communal help that was available, and that is practical help. And especially at the time when we started, we began with practical help following the loss of a partner, the loss of a spouse, because we felt that when that when that person was no longer in your life, it's like losing your right arm. And often people at that point do not know what to do. And they're mourning, they're in a crisis situation, they're in stress, and they can't think straight. And having somebody come in to offer the sort of help that they need at that point with no other axe to grind, not a family who's going to know personal information that perhaps they wouldn't normally wish to share, especially people are left in debt situations, in financial situations which are a little precarious. It can be very soul destroying to share that kind of information with people you know, and people you love, people who are near to you, your family and your friends. One of the things that we feel at Paperweight is a real progress, amongst other things. A real progress is the fact that people are no longer afraid to talk about certain subjects. Mental health, for example, was a subject that nobody ever used to speak about. Cancer was always that unmentionable disease. Mental health and all of those subjects which were never mentioned are now freely spoken about, and that's amazing. But there is one subject that we call the last taboo, and that's anything financially related. So if you're American and you're around a Shabbos table and you're talking about all kinds of topics, it doesn't take long before people are sharing how much they earn and all of those kind of personal pieces of information that an Englishman would never dream of sharing and would rather go to their grave rather than share with somebody they know how much they earn, and let alone if they're in a financially precarious situation. So at Paperweight, the fact that we can offer the kind of help from one of our caseworkers who doesn't know that person and is just willing to help, come in, help that situation, and then move out again, maybe never speaking to that person ever again, is something that's actually quite wonderful and reassuring for the person who needs help at that time. So in the 21st century, we find it's thrown up a new kind of vulnerable and the kind of person who may be below the radar. Perhaps, say, in slightly earlier times, in olden days, you might pop into an elderly neighbor, you might have a cup of tea, you might share a cup of tea, see how things are faring, help to, I don't know, do a few things around the house, tidy the garden. But in today's world, those kind of activities don't even come close to scratching the surface and the care needs of many of those vulnerable people within the community. I have people who say to me sometimes that, but you know, it's 2022, surely things are much easier now than they used to be. And I actually really have a stock answer to that one. And that is that it's not true. It's a very, very difficult time. The only easy thing is, I think, is that we've got indoor toilets. Everything else is vastly difficult. Authorities are very difficult to reach. DWP, the Department of Work and Pensions, barely answer the phone. COVID is a great opt-out for many of them. You know, local authorities, there's hardly anyone in the offices. Forms have become very complicated and many of them are online. If you're not online, what do you do? Life is difficult. Even some of the simpler things, some of the simpler applications that they used to be have become more difficult. They have to be backed up with a whole host of information, a package of associated information from care workers, from your doctor, from whoever's been involved with you. It's stressful and it's difficult, and it doesn't come easily to many people, especially when you've got the addition of a crisis that you might be managing in the background. The other thing is that being alone or vulnerable has taken on a new form and is definitely not limited to age or disability. Global families with people living, you know, all over the world, people's children getting married and living abroad, put many beyond the ability to help with day-to-day. Many of these family members don't have the ability to help their vulnerable member because they're just simply too far away. And those who are close by have, with the pressure of jobs, they've got long hours, and the they relegate the assistance of an elderly parent or relative to the back burner, or even not so elderly. And in any event, it's often easier to discuss financial worries or debt benefits, as I said before, with an anonymous friend. So, sometimes, somebody perhaps who is newly bereaved of say, a spouse, people will say, well, they're going to be okay because they've got family, they've got friends living nearby, they've got people to support them, they're going to be fine. But that's not something that we can easily assume. For a start, the family may be battling with the recent bereavement themselves. They may not have the peace of mind to help. They may not understand what help is needed. You have to understand what help is needed. It's, you can come in and have a cup of tea with someone, but it's not going to get that form filled. People need time, and they need people to understand what help they need at that point. People can be lucky enough to have large families, but then there may not necessarily be anybody within that family who's able to help at that time. So it's not always to be taken for granted that because people seem to be surrounded by family or friends, that that's necessarily the case. Or you might say something like, so-and-so is going to be okay because sadly their spouse was ill for a long time. Surely they've made the handover. Surely they've had that conversation. Surely, the remaining spouse will know what to do. Don't take that for granted either. They could have been running around for a long time for medical appointments, treatments, and also having that conversation means that you are recognizing the fact and taking on board the fact that your beloved spouse is not going to make it, and that's a very, very difficult conversation to have. And you put it off. You put it off for tomorrow. You put it off for the next day, until sadly it's too late and it's happened. And I sometimes feel that when people are in that situation, and sadly spouse has passed away, they sit shiver, but during that shiver time, the envelopes don't start coming. The brown envelopes keep on coming. They get put into the bottom drawer, and they hope that they're going to go away. They get up from shiver, and then, what do? I feel that sometimes having the ability to mourn somebody who you've lost is actually a luxury. And you actually can't access that luxury of mourning because you've got so much stress on your shoulders about what you're going to do. Do you have money? Do you have accounts? Where are the accounts? How many accounts? Do I freeze the money? Is it frozen automatically? Who do I contact? What do I do next? What do I have to think about? There's a car in the drive. Do I need to tax it? Do I need to stop? Do I need to insure it? Council tax, all kinds of information. Nobody's going to come to you voluntarily with that information. For example, you may be eligible for an immediate reduction in council tax. The council don't come to you and give you that information willingly. So there is a lot of things to be thought about. And if all of that's sitting on your shoulder, you haven't even got the luxury of beginning the mourning process. And everyone has to go through a mourning process. For some it's longer, for some it's shorter, whatever it happens to be. But one thing is for sure is that you can't get to the end if you haven't even taken the first steps to even begin internalizing what has just happened to you. So life expectancy, a more particular loneliness, is reflected in the unprecedented rises of people living longer, but this can also mean sometimes that a spouse can be left on their own for a very long time, which is obviously not a far from happy situation. And we often see during this time an unprecedented rise in personal debt, just because people are not sure what to do next. And sometimes by the time they come to us for help, because they've waited so long, they're already in a substantial amount of debt, sometimes even with a bailiff at the door. When it didn't necessarily always have to reach that stage, it was because they didn't know what to do, because they were afraid of what the next stage might be. By the time they've heard about us, or by the time they've picked up the phone and had the courage to ask for help, it's way, way down the line. And obviously then it takes longer to unravel a situation. So the fact that we are now living, an average age is clients are often clients well into the 80s and 90s, plus with the often with beginnings of dementia. The percentage of clients with dementia is something like, and this is quite a large percentage, I don't know the exact numbers, but it is a large percentage even within the country. So we find ourselves in what we call a perfect storm, which is exactly what it is. So we assume that things will run like clockwork, and in good times, when life appears to be smooth running, we accept the roles mandated by society and deal with all manner of situations as they arise. Some become familiar and routine, such as paying the bills, doing the shopping, keeping a home in some semblance of order, being a sandwich generation nowadays. It used to be, you know, in the home, you would have the young ones looking after the older ones looking after the younger ones, but the older ones were 60. They were not 80, 90, even 100. So that sandwich was a very short-lived time. Nowadays, you can be decades of living within that sandwich generation, which has challenges all of its own. And it's not to do with being a child that doesn't want to look after a parent. It's got to do with the challenges involved in in doing all of that to the best of your ability, taking into account that you have got your own family, your own growing family. You may even be a grandparent yourself, and you're still looking after your parents as well. It's a package, and it can be a package that's going on for a long time. So you're being carers to your elders, you're being carers to younger people, and it's a hefty package to keep control of, even when things are running normally, when things are shipshape, when things are running like clockwork, let alone when something happens that brings a challenge to the day. So you've got other issues which are unfamiliar and divert huge energies and time. And these can include such things as the ravages of mental illness, yourself or somebody that you're taking care of, somebody within your family unit, the downhill tumble that's associated with old age. But society has schemes and methods, and we can adapt, and with tools, we can find a way to persevere. Critically, there are those, we call them, I didn't see that coming types of issues, which I would say post-bereavement, but when I use the term post-bereavement, I'm the obvious one, and the one that everybody associates bereavement with is death. But post-bereavement, I take as being a situation that has arisen in your life that has arrested your ability to think straight. So the obvious one, as I say, is a death, and that's a huge one, obviously, but there is plenty of others as well. You know, we all want to get up in the morning, have a wash and get on with our day. We expect the car to get into gear when we turn the ignition. We want to get on with our jobs or do our school rotas and do whatever else would be the norm for us that day. But then there are those I didn't see that coming moments. So a sudden illness could be a diagnosis for yourself or a family member, a diagnosis of physical health, physical health, or mental health. It could be perhaps you've lost your job, perhaps you've lost your savings, perhaps you've been a victim of abuse, or there is abuse going on in your home, and sometimes even homelessness. All of these things, and I'm sure everyone can think of many more examples, mean that your day has changed, and tomorrow is not going to be the same. You've got big issues to deal with. You can't think straight because it's taken your breath away, and you need help. And that is what we're here for. So we set up about 12 years ago. To date, we've helped about 7,000 clients. Those clients, well, in our first year, I think we helped 4 people. Now, I'd say in our 12th year, we get at least, that was 4 people a year. I'd say now we get at least 4 new clients a day, currently, sometimes even more. They come with a plethora of problems, which we try to help. And many of these 7,000 clients don't come with a single issue, they come with multiple issues. And sometimes even within the organization, in order to be able to help them to the best of our ability, we actually need a multidisciplinary team going on within the organization in order to help people better manage their lives and to help them holistically. Our mantra is described as active crisis management, because when somebody calls the helpline and we take an assessment and we take the details and we find out what they need help with, it's not a pin the tail on the donkey. We look at our caseworkers, we look at the skills that they have, and we assign a caseworker to that client who is particularly knowledgeable in the skill base that's needed at that point. And it might be that somebody's come to us because they're sadly going through a divorce, and they will go to our family law clinic. But it could be that whilst they're being helped by our family lawyers, it comes to light that perhaps there's some debt, in which case we need to bring a caseworker in to help with a debt issue. And it might be that help is needed for, it might come to light that they're eligible for welfare and benefits. We need a caseworker for that too. So we've got 3 caseworkers helping one client. But we will hold their hand throughout the whole trauma. We'll advocate for them. We will help them to write impact and forceful letters and arrange beneficial repayments where it's needed for any of their debt situations. So we want to protect our clients. That's what we're here for. And at Paperweight, we erect a barrier between the clients and the harsh bureaucratic demands that come with new and unwelcome territory. There was actually a very interesting, I don't know if anybody saw it, but there was a very interesting interview. Sadly, I didn't catch all of it, but it was on GMTV a couple of mornings ago. They were interviewing a guy called Rob, and he was talking about exactly all the things that Paperweight knew about 12 years ago. He was talking about all of those things and how they were affecting him now, and how he knows that when he gets official envelopes coming through his door, he cannot open them. He literally cannot open them. He goes into apoplexy. And this has caused him huge mental health. And we see this, we just see this all the time, because people are not coping and they don't want to know what this official looking envelope is going to tell them. So the very act of Paperweight becoming involved, contacting demanding creditors, bureaucratic departments, for example, brings a huge amount of relief and comfort to the client. We ask the departments to deal with us so that we can be a conduit to the client, and the client, knowing that we're involved and that we understand the help they need, already is helping them to take a deep breath and to be able to have less of a panic. And we obviously find that these ways, that these modus operandi that we have, can be very successful. So some of the things, just to list you, some of the things that we deal with, it's quite a huge list, is housing, which has become quite a huge topic at the moment, welfare and benefits, banks and probates and wills, debts and creditors, officialdom basically in all its guises. And for those whose domestic life has got an additional rough edge of abuse or neglect, which is sadly not as, when it is, I was going to say, it is more common than you would think. Paperweight are also there for family law matters, both the civil court and working together with the based-in in order to be able to help with the get as well. This also involves myriads of bundles of paperwork and court appearances and documents that go with it. We will handhold a client through all of these issues. Those that attend our family law clinic are usually one of the longest standing clients, because seeing through a divorce to the end of a decree absolute is not a 2-day process. It does take a long time, especially where there's children and finances involved. It can go on for a very long time. We offer a free service to our clients, and we work together with every major and minor welfare organisation in the community and also outside of the community. and we receive referrals from them all the time, and we work together with them and refer back to them. We have great working relationships with them, and also from the local authority social services, with whom we work all the time, especially in conurbations where there are Jewish people, and believe me, there's more of them than you might imagine as well. And we tailor make the service for our client. We tailor make it according to their set of crises. COVID has brought its own stories. Obviously, not every problem we encounter originates with COVID, but frequently, the 22 months of COVID at its worst and associated consequences did not help matters at all, and definitely made them worse. And a singular, but probably not unique to Paperweight, is that also during this time is that clients will self-refer themselves to us rather than coming through. It's a brave person that lifts up the phone to ask for help, wherever they're asking for help, whether it's whichever of the organisations. It's not easy for people to do that. It's a huge step. They can be embarrassed, they can be ashamed, they can feel that the reason why they're calling us is something that perhaps they should have been able to deal with themselves. It's very hard, especially for English people. We're not good at asking for help. But they've gone through their heartache and despair, they will take a bold step. They'll pick up the phone themselves and tell a total stranger managing the Paperweight helpline, I'm out of my depth. These are my issues. Can you help? We actually had during COVID an email from a lady. I'm telling you this because it's just always stuck in my head, because you might think that the sort of people we help are just frail old ladies, not just frail old ladies. We help lots of frail old ladies and not so frail ladies, and some of them not old, and lots of men too. Because actually our statistics show that amongst all those 7,000 clients, it's probably even Stevens on male and females, apart from a family law clinic, which happens to be mainly female. But we had an email from a nurse who was in charge of a 40-bed medical acute ward. I think she was a sister on the ward. So you can imagine somebody super intelligent, used to making decisions, big decisions, life decisions, and certainly somebody you'd imagine could take care of herself. And she could very well and very ably take care of herself. And that was until the day she was struck by COVID. Within a week, she was really ill. It literally robbed her of her ability to think straight. And even once she recovered, this ability didn't just spring back. And she emailed us feeling completely helpless. One of the things that she needed to do, amongst other things, was fill in a passport application online, and she simply couldn't do it. And this was a nurse in charge of a 40-bed medical acute ward. So none of us know from one day to the next. We feel efficient, we feel that we're coping, that we feel that we can do what we need to do every day, and we don't know what that day is going to bring. Lots of paperwork in 2022 is confusing, and specifically and definitely paperwork associated with the Department of Work and Pensions is confusing territory to many people. Although benefit forms are meant to be completed, for example, by individuals rather than specialists, there is a reason why many people applying on their own without the help of somebody who knows what they're doing simply are told they're not eligible. Knowing how to answer the questions, knowing what the Department of Work and Pensions are wanting from you, the sort of information they're wanting, how they're wanting it, how they're wanting the wording to be phrased is of paramount importance when filling out these forms. Likewise, the blue badges, likewise, a myriad of forms and paperwork that we need to do just simply to get by in 2022. Terminology is vague. Any claim forms and assessments can make people feel completely disorientated and disheartened. When a client calls our helpline, we take down all the essential details. Sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming, but there's a reason for all the questions that we ask. And obviously this helps us to build a picture of somebody we hadn't known previously, in order that we can, assess them and pass on to a trained team for allocations. And within a very few days, the client will have their first one-to-one meeting with a caseworker, with a designated personal caseworker, who will, following that, devise a set of strategies in order to be able to cope and suppress the effects of the crises that are being faced. Our caseworkers are sympathetic, they're empathetic, they work with us because they understand what clients are going through in their various situations, they're knowledgeable, and they will learn to understand each client's specific situation. And they themselves within Paperweight we have a structured hierarchy in order to be able to support our caseworkers. So today I have with me Caroline Kahan, who's our head of services, who does provide critical support for our caseworkers. We have operations manager, we have team leaders. So there is nobody within the Paperweight hierarchy who is left unsupported. Our caseworkers are trained. We train our caseworkers regularly on a whole plethora of subjects. Some subjects which we call the hard topics on criteria, on legislation, on policies and procedures, on information on whatever it might be, specific subjects on housing, on employment, etc. And there's also the softer subjects of how to engage in a more advantageous way with clients who are stressed because of different situations. An example might be, for example, during COVID, ever-changing rules regarding rent and mortgage holidays. More latterly, would be subjects such as ground rent trap, and the ongoing controversy about the liability of replacing dangerous cladding with deferrals of credit card and bank payments, which we can explain to them in terms that they themselves understand. We can open up dialogue with landlords and lenders, explaining clients' positions and discuss potential plans of action, and especially if a client is being unlawfully harassed. Summaries of all the government schemes and timings are we provided specifically over COVID, bulletins and summaries, and we updated them always on the Paperweight website, so they're there for people to access quite easily. So we endeavour always, all the time, to accelerate all communications with outside parties in order to be able to stabilise as quickly as possible situations that have arisen. The welfare of dependents, old or young, is also addressed, and we ensure that the right local authority departments and the right communal organisations are brought to the frame. So just like all of the organisations within the community, without the community, local authorities, as I mentioned before, will refer clients to us regularly every day. We too, if we have clients and we feel that they would be helped in addition by any of the other organisations, we will refer them onwards as well. And that way, you can literally see how you can help a client holistically in so many aspects of their lives, and you can just make things so much better for them. We can also provide directions to achieving reconciliation if it's domestic, if we're talking about domestic relations, so via mediation. And as I say, if it's past all of that, then it will go through our family law courts, a family law team. Baroness Joan Bakewell cites 5 new horsemen that stalk society: poverty, isolation, discrimination, injustice, and neglect. And at Paperweight, we champion the ordinary people and we tackle social injustice, and that is really the aim of our game. We will invest all our energy into our clients' problems and critically assess the problems that we believe that we can help, and direct all of our clients to differently focused organisations if we need to, as mentioned. we supply the communities most vulnerable with 3 ingredients: time, expertise, and practical care. And they are the cornerstones of an evolving national system that has positively benefited over 7,000 clients in the 12 years since we began. We have the main body of Paperweight relies on volunteers from all walks of life who embody in the truest manner of loving one's fellow Jew as one loves oneself. And that's really what we aim to do. And we just want to make things better for people in as best way as we possibly can. We can't always do everything, but we can always do something. And that's a wonderful thing when you can do it. So I think I've probably spoken for long enough. So thank you. And if anybody's got any questions or anything they want to ask, feel free.
Well, thank you very much. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand or your virtual hand. Can we go to full screen again, please, Elliot? Caroline, do you want to add anything to what Bela has said? Unmute.
Sorry, I was listening so carefully, I forgot that I'm on mute. No, other than to say that, as Bela has said, we offer a mixture of tailored guidance together with practical support on a range of issues. We allocate cases according to the particular skills and expertise of the caseworker and the client's needs. Cases can take longer or shorter depending on what they're about. And also depending on the support needs of the client. So, you know, we have some people who are very able to help themselves with some sufficient guidance, and we have other people who are more vulnerable and need more support. And as with all voluntary sector organisations, we reserve that support for the most vulnerable and enable everybody to be in a position to hopefully move forward. That's our main aim. So, you know, if anyone has any sort of questions, as obviously not personal to situations, but of a general nature, then Bela and I would be very happy to answer them.
Thanks very much. Keith Myers, if you can unmute.
Hello. It was more a statement of thanks, I suppose, and just to appreciate the work that you're doing.
So nice.
Just to add, I remember you were talking about bereavement, and it's also people who have disabling conditions. So my father, for example, had a stroke 5 years before he died, so he was unable to take any of the business decisions he otherwise would have done. So my mother then had to go through all of these things that you're talking about. It wasn't by the time he died, she'd already gone through all of these stages because she'd had that feeling of hopelessness and whatever as well. And the other thing I would say, I'm not sure that I heard you mention about power of attorney, because that's something that we didn't have for my father, but we do now have for my mother, which is really very important, because if you don't have it,
absolutely
really,
right. Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah,
for medicine and for money.
Yeah. It's absolutely paramount that people have power of attorneys in place. I don't think I did mention it actually, but you're right to bring it up. It's crucial. Otherwise, the rights to make a decision for your nearest and dearest will be taken away, and then it's got to go through the court of protection, and it just gets very complicated and very elongated. It is one of those. Is when you make a will, take out power of attorney as well. And we can help with all of that. It's downloadable online, and it's something that people, again, are expected to be able to fill out themselves. But there's lots of questions, lots of things to think about, and we've helped many people go through, make that application with them. So, yeah, thank you for bringing it to account. And it's true what you say about your mum. So it's what I said before. It's something that stops your ability to think straight, and your mum really went through all of that 5 years before you lost your father. But she was left suddenly in a position where she had to be able to navigate everything, where in all intents and purposes, wasn't able to do anything for himself because of his stroke.
Peter Garber, if you can unmute.
Okay.
Fine.
Hello. Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I just wondered how you fund, because if you're offering a free service, how do you pay your care workers and your caseworkers, or is it all voluntary?
So most of the roles within Paperweight are voluntary, but that's not. And we have some paid roles within Paperweight, but obviously we have huge expenses just running an office. And in fact, actually yesterday, we moved into new premises. So we've been operating for the last 6 or 7 years from a small office in Bell Lane, 85A Bell Lane in Hendon. Yesterday, we moved into our new offices, which is 2 doors down at 89 Bell Lane, and we're actually keeping both premises. And yes, it does all need to be funded. So it's difficult. We do have people who do make personal donations, but not many. We access grants. We do some fundraising, but it's quite a challenging thing for us to fundraise, because unlike some organizations, it's not the tearjerker maybe that some organizations sort of automatically engender to people. So for us to fundraise is sometimes quite challenging. But 2 years ago we did one of these charity extra campaigns, which did bring in some funding for us, and please God, we're hoping to do another one towards the end of the year, and this really helps us to keep ourselves going. We for the first 10 years we literally worked on a shoestring, but with the advent of COVID and all the extra clients it's bringing us, it became impossible to carry on just with volunteers. It's just not possible. The complexity of the cases that we receive and the number of cases we receive meant that we couldn't really continue, and without having some paid staff in place.
Okay, thank you.
Have you raised with any of the synagogal bodies the possibility of employing social workers?
How do you mean with the synagogal bodies?
Well, as far as I know, most synagogues don't consider it appropriate to employ a social worker on their staff. Is it something that is needed, given the complexity of the issues that you've raised?
Well, we actually have a social worker who is our operations manager. I think that we try to speak a lot to rabbis, to synagogues, and we receive obviously referrals from synagogues, so that we work together with rabbis, we work together with shul administrators, we work together sometimes with shul care committees as well, because we can offer a greater variety of help than perhaps sometimes they're able to. So we are happy to take those referrals and to work together with synagogues, as best as we possibly can. We have the knowledge to do that, really.
Right. And can you discuss briefly how you deal with the overlap between the issues that you're dealing with and those of some other organizations? There are several organizations, for example, that deal with GET.
Yes, but we work in a different way. There may be an organization that works with GET, but they work with they mainly work with the fact that perhaps one in the parties is refusing to give the GET. I would say that actually, as an organization, there is practically no overlap with anything that any other organization is doing. We provide a service that before we started is not out there. Actually, since we started, a couple of organizations have actually tried to do what we do. Is that, we don't offer counseling, for example, because there's organizations out there that do counseling. We don't, I don't know, I can't really think, we don't, I don't give mental health support because there's mental health organizations out there. We do give some mental health training within Paperweight, because what we want is not to make mental health experts of our caseworkers, for example, but what we want is We want them to have a knowledge as to how to deal with clients who may be suffering from ill mental health. So it gives them better knowledge of how to interact, how to get the best information, how to work in the best way with somebody who is suffering in that way. But I would say, actually, Spencer, that the work that we do is not actually replicated anywhere else at all. It is unique.
And is there a reluctance on the part of some parts of the community to seek help at all? I'm thinking, for example, would there be a difference between the more liberal organisations and, say, the Haredim?
No, we have both. We help across the community. Caroline will attest to that. We help across the community from the right to the left, anywhere in between. In fact, our caseworkers and volunteers, paid employees are from across the community themselves, again, from the right to the left and anywhere in between. We work cross-communally. Our clients come from across the community, from different areas. They're all looking for the similar kinds of help, the issues that are prevalent today in May 2022. And really, it makes no difference whether, which part of the community they're from. In fact, I had somebody recently who said to me, because we were talking about the phrase that everyone's heard of now, eat or heat, where some people are making a decision, literally having to make a decision as to whether they heat or eat today, tomorrow. And somebody's, excuse me, somebody said to me, but surely everyone in our community has got some money. That is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. And I wish it was true, but it's not.
Sure.
They don't.
Yeah. Well, in most communities, even those that you think are affluent, there's the distribution of free matzahs at Pesach, for example.
Yeah. And you don't know who is accessing help. It looks like everyone's fine. But I promise you, it's the people in your street, it's your neighbors, and it's your family. You just don't know it. You literally just don't know it. And it's shocking. It is shocking. You can't take away from it. It is shocking. People are struggling. They brought an example recently of a lady called Elsie, not a Jewish lady, but this mirrors whatever happens outside the community is happening inside of the community. There is no difference. Elsie is somebody who was managing. She was a widowed, elderly widow. She was managing just about. And then, of course, her utilities went sky high. They rose into the, I don't know, it was like £1,000, 800 or £1,000 a month, as opposed to the small amount that she was paying before. Well, that's not just Elsie, that's everyone. But Elsie is now choosing which time of day she's going to eat the one meal that she's going to eat, which is the optimum time she's going to eat that one meal in the day. Is it breakfast? That's a bit too soon because it will leave the rest of the day empty. So the more she can go towards the middle of the day, that will kind of service her from the beginning, from the middle to the end, which is, frightful to think of. And not only that, because she can't afford to heat her home, she takes the bus and she changes buses and she goes around all day in a bus, because if she's on a bus, she doesn't have to heat her home. That's not just Elsie, that could be Shoshana too, really. And we can support that with a countless. We had somebody come to us today, literally today. He's got £30,000 worth of debt. That wasn't Elsie. That was Chaim or whoever he was. So.
And we hear that things are going to get worse. Yeah. We already have an increase in energy prices, but we're going to have a further increase in October. The price cap will be raised and so on. Are you doing anything within your organisation to prepare for that and the increased workload that you're going to have?
We definitely are. Well, as I say, we've moved into our new premises. I'm actually speaking from them now. Yesterday. So within our new premises, we have more meeting rooms, so we can have more client meetings. We're going to start clinics on various topics. We're just taking on quite a large new cohort of caseworkers with a variety of skills that we're specifically looking for. So we are.
Yeah, we are constantly looking to recruit suitably skilled people in a whole range of areas to enable us to cope with the demand that we have currently and with increased demand that is almost certainly going to follow over the coming months. We train our caseworkers particularly rigorously in the areas in which, you know, we know there are lots and lots of inquiries, such as benefits, debt, housing, all the sorts of issues that you would imagine. And additionally, we have a lot of we see a lot of relationship breakdown, often with elements of abuse of one form or another. So we are basically a microcosm of the wider society. We encounter the same problems. Perhaps the only difference is that if you're lucky enough to belong to the Jewish community, there is a natural support network out there for those people, as long as once they become known, to help them, so that, you know, with food packages, with making sure that they're getting everything they're entitled to, helping them to budget more effectively. There are things that we are already, strategies that we're already putting in place to help people not succumb to even greater debt. And that's certainly, budgeting is key. Looking at what is coming in, what is going out, so that you're not overspending, perhaps cutting down on unnecessary, although, you know, that's very difficult to gauge, and that's very much a personal decision. But, you know, perhaps reducing any expenditure where possible, making sure that you prioritize your outgoing, so you pay your rent before you pay your credit card. Make sure that you claim any grants to which you may be entitled. Make sure that you're getting all the benefits to which you are entitled or may be entitled. So that, you know, we do that daily. And that is actually critical to money management, income maximization, and trying to put people in the best position that they can be, albeit everybody is going to be faced with very difficult circumstances over the coming months.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, at the moment, this session is coming from Edgware, and we go through the whole of the age range. And we have younger people who can help older people. When COVID came, we helped with shopping, and we had people phone. And I can see Nicole Duke here. She might want to comment, but she helped with, she was in charge of welfare. But there are other communities that are in decline, where on the whole there's only elderly people, and you don't have younger people who can advise or help them.
Yeah.
Is that a major problem for you?
Not more than anyone else, really, because we'll engage with the client themselves. And, you know, a lot of our clients that we do help, and as I said before, and do have, and are lucky enough to perhaps live, you know, within the centre of the community, have their own family and friends, doesn't mean to say that those family and friends are engaged with helping them. So you could still class them as being alone. You know, it's a thing that, you know, if somebody needs help from another person, you can ask for help, and you'll receive that help with pleasure. You may need to ask for slightly different help a time later, and again another time. But, you know, if you're in a situation where you're in any of the situations that myself or Carolina has mentioned, they're not always, you know, 2-minute, you know, things that somebody can help another person with. And if you have somebody with whom you're friends, you're a friend of, and you have to keep asking all the time for help, you're going to find very soon, and it's nobody's fault, it just kind of happens by osmosis, that the relationship starts to change. And, you know, your friend becomes the one who is providing the help, and you kind of, by default, become the needy one. And it brings a change in the relationship. And if you're going through a crisis, you're going through a hard time, you need your friends. You know, you need your friends as your friends, and not as somebody who isn't always going to answer the phone to you anymore, because, you know, it's only going to be another ask for help. So even those who, you know, appear to have everything going for them, don't necessarily have everything going for them. I give you an example of a client who came to us who actually was living with some mental health issues, but she was trying to live an independent life by herself in a small flat, very small flat. She had a small job, and she was kind of doing okay. But then over a period of time, she was losing track of her spend, and her money was not making it to the end of the month. So she has a mum. So you'll say, why didn't she ask the mum for help? Well, she did. She said, I'm in trouble. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. I'm getting into debt now because my money's not reaching the end of the month. Can you help me, mum? So the mum comes in to help. But coupled with the fact that they're related, there's already, we all know that within families, there's this personal stuff going on, even with the best of relationships. The mum's trying to explain to her daughter what she thinks she ought to be doing. But the daughter's perhaps not taking it on board as quickly as the mum would like, because she has got some mental health problems. And over a time, the relationship is deteriorating, not because anybody wanted it to, it's just happening. She heard of Paperweight, she gave us a call. We could send in our caseworker who could work through everything with her. This literally gave her life back. She saw where she was going wrong with gentle explanation, very, very delicately explained. It was set out in a way in which she could understand. Some clients will be okay with spreadsheets, some clients will want it practically in folders, however it's meant to be. That not only helps her have her independent life back, but it also gives her her relationship back with her mother. They can go out for a coffee, they can do what mothers and daughters do. She's got a global life now instead of a deteriorating relationship. So, the fact that you think that somebody is well able to manage because they've got a task force of people around them, promise you, it's not always what it appears to be.
Can I also add to that with regard to supporting elderly communities in particular? Well, a couple of the aspects of our service is that firstly, we do provide home visits, assuming COVID allows, we provide home visits, which is huge for a lot of people, particularly elderly people who feel more secure within the home environment and have their paperwork to hand. And a lot of those people don't have access to IT either. The other thing is that we provide a service called Paperweight, which is sort of a monthly check-in service for people to help them manage their paperwork. So a lot of people who are perhaps older members of the community or are on their own, they struggle to keep track of the bills, the outgoings, etc., etc. And we provide a monthly check-in service whereby a caseworker will go to the person's home, look through bills with them, make sure that they're on top of everything, etc., etc. Have a chat with them because, there is a huge amount of loneliness and isolation as well as actual need for practical support. And I think that is a very, very important feature of the service we offer. To be honest, I don't know many other organisations, if any, that can offer that level of support on an ongoing basis.
I think we should just say at that point, Caroline, that the Paperweight, this Paperweight service that Caroline has just mentioned, for that we actually do ask for a small contribution because it's very long term and it's a monthly commitment and it's a real support and it really helps people to remain independent. So it could be the elderly who are, finding that things are slipping. So there's not a great crisis, or maybe we have settled the crisis within Paperweight, but it's just, as Caroline said, it's the general maintenance of knowing that the same person is going to be in touch with you month in, month out. If you've got any questions, you can make a list. You can perhaps contact them in between time if you need to. It's just knowing that that person is going to be coming and just checking all of these things for you. But it's a regular service, and for that we do ask for a small contribution, but it's not huge, and it's also it also depends if somebody can afford or not afford. We always look at all of those things. So actually, even though I say it's we ask for contribution, to be honest, we kind of reduce it for most people anyway. So it might even be for single people, single parents, I meant, you know, who are, I don't know, juggling a job and the children and the rotas and the homework. And, you know, by the time all of that's done, they sort of simply don't have the energy and the focus to see to their own affairs. So that could be another example of somebody who wants to access that kind of service.
Right, well, we're reaching the hour now. So does anyone have a last point they want to make? No. And we do have a comment here from Linda Edwards. Baylor, thank you so much for a very realistic talk. I am in awe of the work you're doing. I'm so taken by your non-judgmental attitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda.
So I'd like to thank Baylor Perrin for explaining in depth what her organization does, and she'll be happy to hear from you whether you wish to become a volunteer within Paperweight or whether you need assistance that it can provide. Our next session will be on Tuesday, the 24th of May, when Deborah Brunner, the CEO of the Together Plan charity, will lead a session on Jewish Belarus over 700 years. She'll consider cultural heritage as a driver for social change in the former Soviet Union. Details of the current Edgeware program can be found on our website, www.edgwareu.com, or alternatively, you can contact our office@edgwareu.com, and ask to be placed on the circulation list for the adult education program. Recorded past sessions are on our Edgware US YouTube channel, and tonight's session will be uploaded immediately to YouTube. Thank you for attending this session.
Spencer, can I just add one last thing, actually, which I wanted to mention? We have a new booklet out called "It's Time to Have the Conversation," and it goes through everything that people need to think about post-bereavement, or if you haven't thought about them pre-bereavement, you haven't thought about them then I guess post-bereavement. We're happy to work through our caseworkers happy to work through that with any client who might need it. And it's a good preparation if anyone's able to, and of course many people are not able to, so we're there for post help as well. It's literally just been printed. If you would like us to send some to your shul, we can do that. If you want to distribute them, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you everyone, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.